Well, welcome. I'm sorry I'm running a bit late. Let me turn off um, this image. Sorry about that. Running late tonight. Have lots of things to talk about. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know if it's too hot. It looks just a little bit hot, but welcome to Life Journey Production Studios. I'm Keith. Welcome to the live stream Tuesdays at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I'm excited to be with you. We have a topic tonight that we're going to cover a number of things. I want to have time for Q&A. I know I seem to cram a lot in these live streams. I hope you're enjoying that. I hope you're subscribing to the channel. If you have, thank you so much. We've actually had a number of subscribers this week. It's been slow this summer as far as the last probably 30, 35 days, but that's cool. I love to be on live. I also love to do videos behind the scenes. I'm excited about things that are happening in the world I'm at. I think you guys have heard. See if this macro works. I ordered the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus and from the dev store right here in Washington. And the last time I emailed them was about 2 or 3 days ago. They had not even heard from Blackmagic yet. So that's on its way. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I've watched a couple videos. They are surfacing now and people are talking about it pre-unboxing it. I watched the unboxing this week. I'll put a link to that video here in the description tonight when we're all done. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Let's just check our audio. And if you're on live with me, hey from Chicago, Bill, it's great to have you with me. See if I can get some headphones here and just make sure that we sound good. Yeah, I get to hear myself echoing because of the delay. And let me just make sure I have the delay set. So I have between 4 and 5 frames of delay set in my studio, and that's because of my Rodecaster Pro. So obviously, if you have audio in your studio, you could use a USB microphone of some kind. My son has one in that room right over there, and he uses a USB microphone. I'm using my Rodecaster Pro. It has 4 inputs as far as XLR microphones, and this is a Shure SM7B, and I'm running it through channel 1, and there's a little bit of delay between my lips coming from this camera, or if I switch to camera 1, which is right here tonight, and we are going to spend a little bit of time right here in front of this camera. I don't use this view a lot, but you can see I have it all set up tonight, and hopefully the lips don't get off even more when I switch to that view. But so we're going to talk about lenses tonight, cameras. I don't know what kind of camera you're using. If you are live streaming or you're doing Zoom, are you using your iPhone? Are you using your smartphone? Are you using your tablet? Do you have a Mac? Do you have a PC? Are you using a USB camera like a Logitech or some other USB camera brand? Are you using a USB microphone? We're not going to talk too much about sound tonight. That's probably a topic for a complete live stream. And if you know my history, I had a recording studio for a number of years. My son was in a bunch of bands. I have kind of an engineer brain, so I got a rolling recorder and 24 tracks and started recording in just kind of a rack. Not a rack, but it was a desktop recorder. It looks like just like a soundboard you would see in any kind of music venue, but it was a digital recorder. And then we switched over from that to Pro Tools. And then I also started using Studio One, which is by Presonus, and it's got great software. Now you can use Adobe Audition. You can use video editing in a Mac like Final Cut Pro. You can use GarageBand for audio, but most of us probably are using some type of interface, or we're using our computer as an interface. And so my Rodecaster Pro goes in to my computer. And so we're not, like I said, we're not going to talk much about audio tonight, but I just wanted to let you know that that's a part of this whole process of live streaming, and the audio tonight is going from my Rodecaster Pro into my ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, and then I have 4 frames of delay just to get the lips in sync with the video. So let me know if what you're seeing is in sync because you never know. So it's delayed on YouTube, and it's actually a little bit delayed to my monitor. So as I look at my confidence monitor right now, which is right above my camera, it's easy for me to think my lips are off. So again, tonight we're going to talk about lenses, cameras. I have some cameras here in the studio with me, some cameras we're going to switch around to. My Canon 5D Mark III, which we're going to turn on here in a minute, which is going to be our Sky Cam. And we're going to talk about different tools that you can use to do video for live streaming. And you can use any of these tools. We'll talk about some of the differences of those tools. I've used pretty much a little bit of everything streaming. I've streamed from my smartphone. I have streamed from a DJI Action, and we're going to talk about those things tonight, as well as DSLRs, and now I have a mirrorless camera. And then there's also lots of other type cameras, like you've seen security systems. Now you have cameras like security system cameras that are now 4K, 1080p, and their frame rates are now up to par, and you can get some of those, and they actually even have the ability to control those all through either MIDI or through an Ethernet port. And that's quite fascinating as well, because you could zoom in, zoom out, and turn around. All my cameras that I'm using in my studio are stationary. And because normally I'm sitting right here, last week I got up and used a mobile microphone to show you guys lights. And so we talked about lights last week and some other things here on the channel. And I want to talk about cameras and lenses. And then what is a key? Right? So when you are doing using a Blackmagic Design switcher, they have keys in them. If you use switchers by other manufacturers, they have keys. Some of the philosophies are different, but the principle of a key, principle of an upstream key and a downstream key are very similar, even though some of the ways the software uses those and controls those might be slightly different. And we're going to talk about that. I want to spend the majority of our time tonight talking about keys at the last half. We're going to start right now by talking about lenses and talking about cameras. I want to say hi to Art Johnson. I don't think you've been on the channel before, so thanks for dropping in. Hopefully we'll have some more people join us tonight. If you're actually watching the chat, I'm not looking at the YouTube screen right now, so I don't know how many people are in here. Please make sure you say hi. Let us know where you're from. That's the power of this medium, social media, live streaming on YouTube, or you can live stream a number of other social media places. And you can also have conversations with people through the web. There's new plugins, like OBS has the new Video Ninja that was written, so you could specifically bring people in through a web browser. So lots of ways for us to communicate and be around the world. Obviously, we still have the language barrier, maybe some word communications, even as I speak English and have spent my whole life here in the United States. Maybe your version of English is a little different than mine. I do have an accent, I'm sure, in Washington, where in some of my years in Pennsylvania, I had a little bit of different accent. And if you go south here in the United States, you're going to pick up some more accents, and really there's accents everywhere. So hopefully you can understand me and we can kind of learn and grow tonight. That's my passion. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about cameras. So I actually have, when I first started streaming, I didn't have a laptop. I just had a PC, and the only way you could get video into a PC was to actually use a webcam. And I have a Logitech C90. There's different versions of this camera now. I'm going to fire up my mobile phone as a camera right now so you guys can see what I'm seeing here in the studio. And so, and then I actually have this camera live in OBS, and I can bring it up on my desktop here in a minute. But I want to kind of just show you real quickly the cameras that I have in my studio on a regular basis. We'll talk about how you use them. I'll bring some cameras out that I'm not using right now that I have as well. And let's just take a real quick tour. So we'll start with the camera that I started with as far as doing live streaming, and that was the Logitech USB camera. It is right here above me. So let me switch to, let's see, the best way to do this would be to switch to this. And then what I want to do here stand by here. I think it's this key right here. There you go. I got picture in picture up. So here is my USB camera, and it's actually pointing down at my desk. We'll kind of scoot back. I have it on one of my Elgato key light arms, and that's a flex arm attachment, which is extra. And I keep it up there, so if I'm in Zoom or something like that, I can cut to that camera. I'm actually using the Canon 5D Mark IV right here. You can see it just to the left of me, obviously, so it's over there. And that has a lens on it we'll talk about here in a minute. And then I have this camera right here, which is my EOS R, and I can just push the shutter button here. Make sure you guys can see this. Get my hand out of the way here. How do I do this? There we go. Push this button. And then it has this flip around monitor, which I love. So you guys can see it. It's right here. And I like to be able to see that. I can make sure that the eye detection is working. And I had someone recently ask me if this Viltrox adapter, which is right here, because I have to adapt my lenses, does this work with eye detection for the EOS R? And yes, it does work just perfectly fine for the EOS R. So that's my first camera. I call that camera A. It's in channel 1. This is camera 2 right there. And then I have my first DSLR, which is my Canon 5D Mark III, and it times out. I've shared this before, that some of the cameras, the older cameras, just time out. Doesn't matter if you have a dummy battery in them or what, but they will time out. I apologize for walking away from the mic here. So I'm going to turn this on real quick. Off and back on again. And that lets it come back into the live stream. And then we'll cut to that camera from camera 3. And so this gives me, for 30 minutes, a overhead shot. And so I'll turn this key off so you guys can just see the studio. Shot down at my desk. I have a couple things I wanted to write down. I didn't want to forget. And so there's kind of my desk layout. Here is, you can't quite see over here. So we'll switch back to camera 4 or 5 here. And so I have my ATEM Mini Pro, which I started with after I quit using my Cam Link. And then I have my new Extreme ISO. So that'll ISO record. This will only record the program out. And then that's my Rodecaster Pro. That's my Elgato Stream Deck, and I use it mainly to control my Elgato key lights. And there's a key light there and a key light right here, and that's fallen down. So we'll adjust that here in a minute. That's my hair light, so it's not gonna look as nice as things would have looked. So let's cut back to this camera, put this down. So 3 cameras live right now, but there's other options as well too. In fact, my web camera is live. Let's see if we can cut to that. OBS has to be brought in through my desktop. So let me do a full screen, and man, is it out of adjustment here. So let me fix this here real quick so it doesn't look entirely horrible. Configure video. And the problem with some of these webcams is that things, after a while, they time out if you set them up in OBS. So you really have to make sure that you get everything set right. The brightness, this thing goes pretty crazy with the gain from the default software. So let me just hit OK on that, and I'll just show this real quickly here so you guys can see it. Full screen to my desktop. And now let me cut to my desktop here. And so there's a look at my USB camera. And so it can show you my whole desk. So again, ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, my HyperDeck Mini. I'm getting ready to add a Studio HD Plus, which was just announced and it's on order. My Extreme Deck and my Rodecaster Pro, just two of the extra pieces I have in here that do, one does audio and one lets me set up keys to control things in my studio. So You don't have to have a DSLR camera. You can use a USB camera. I also have a DJI. They have two versions of this. This is the Dji Mobile. And with the phone app, you can stream from this. So I could literally fire this up and then use my phone to control this. And it has a built-in gimbal. So this is really cool. Aaron Parecki did a live stream with his DJI Mobile 2. This is the older version, so the 2 has some bonus features and some extra cool things. So I have streamed live with this when I've been out on the road because I can stream right through my phone as long as I have access to the internet. So I've used that, so we'll turn that off. It goes in this nice handy-dandy case. I know people have streamed from GoPros, and I've seen people do that. You can stream from your phone. You could use like a GoPro. Also, DJI makes an action camera. And one of the things I love about the action camera is it has the back screen. And then if you were going to see if I can get this thing to switch. So now it's switched. And so if I was going to vlog, which people are saying vlogging is dead now, I don't know if that's true, then I would be able to see myself in this little front screen. So I like this. Again, same app by DJI. So I can live stream from this. Obviously, there may be some delay. You got to figure out sound, right? You need a microphone. So you could use the DJI Mobile microphone. Now they have a double version of it, so you could have a guest. They have adapters that you can plug right into the USB-C port. There is not a microphone input on this. There's not a microphone input on the DJI Mobile. You have to buy an adapter, which I have in my kit, and there's even some Amazon versions of it that work really well. And so this would be more of a traditional framing, right? But this, typically, an action camera is a wider camera, but they usually have stabilization built into it. So for mobile recording, or if you needed to live stream where you wanted to be mobile walking around, this is going to have some really good built-in stabilization. There is some cropping when you get up to 4K and you're using stabilization, but it's another great resource for live streaming. So, and then now there's some higher end cameras. DJI just announced a nicer interface that you can use an XLR microphone like the Shure SM7B or like a pod mic into your PC or your Macintosh. And that interface has lots of good features. They have a new web camera that retails for $200. The Logitech is anywhere, versions of it, anywhere from about $80 to $179, depending on if you get the newest version and the higher end HD. But again, web cameras typically don't have the same quality sensors and the same quality glass. And that brings us to our next conversation. So when you're streaming, it's not only just the camera and its ability. And you know that these little action cameras do not have big sensors. And what a sensor does is that's what captures the light through the lens. And then it has to convert that into video or a photograph or a time lapse or a slow motion. All of that takes place on the sensor. Sensors are part of the computer built into these new cameras and to DSLRs. They have what they call crop sensors. You'll see all sizes. 35 millimeter would be the typical size sensor, like what you would use film in a camera 4 years ago. So it's kind of the standard, and lenses are measured in how much crop they have. When you put them on a smaller sensor, then the lens gets cropped in. So what you could see through a lens with a 35 mil sensor, you can't see all of the same things when you use a micro four thirds or a micro thirds or whatever you're using in your device. And so Sony camcorders, Sony cameras, Nikon, Lumix, all of those brands, Canon, the list just goes on and on. There's lots of choices. There's lots of different USB cameras. People are specializing in those cameras because they are trying to give more and more of us options for live streaming, for video production, because it's become a part of everybody's life. People are taking video with their phones now. You can edit, shoot photographs with your phones. Some phones like mine have 2 different lenses. So let's talk lenses real quick. Let me just give a shout out. Anybody else that's jumped on here yet, please let me know you're in the chat tonight. And I will take some questions here in a few minutes. So cool. Thank you for letting me know, Art, that the delay is working great. So I'll try to make this a 2-way conversation. So let me know in the chat right now if you live stream. So yes to stream. So you can say stream yes. And if you're using a USB camera, or you're using a camera on your laptop, like I have a 720p camera, and 720p stands for the size of the picture. And when I was a kid, we had a black and white TV, then we got a color TV, and I think it was 480 by 680, something like that. And that was the measurements, how tall and how wide. And then it went to widescreen later. Those tube TVs went away to LED TVs, LCD TVs. And then obviously plasma came out, projection came out. Projections were just like to see the big screens at venues where they projected from a projector, right, onto the screen, and then even higher end QLED, OLED, and all of that. And now we see high end little screens inside mirrorless cameras like my EOS R, and they're incredible. The monitors that we're using, 4K, everything is changing. So there's lots of options, and lenses are a part of that choice. So let's talk lenses here real quick. There's lots of different lenses. I brought my one of my lenses that's not being used right now. Most of the lenses I use here in the studio, because it's not a big room, go pretty wide. So I have a lens in here that's 24 mil wide. I have a lens in here that will do 16 mil. In fact, I have 2 that will do 24. This one right here is, I lose track. That's my 24 to 105, and it's an f4 lens. And what that means is that it doesn't matter how zoomed in or zoomed out. You have a aperture of 4 is the widest as you can go, and then it goes up quite a bit higher. This is a 50 mil prime, and what that means is that it doesn't zoom in and zoom out. It will always be a 50 millimeter shot, and when you get from like 24 to 50 mil, things begin to change in your background. You look less wide. So that's why GoPros are super wide and everything seems a little out of shape. And now they have special cropping and de-warping. But that's the lens that you're seeing. You're looking at so much of the lens. You're not looking very much through the middle of the lens, and they're not adjusting in the glass. So they have to adjust the picture in the digital world. And that obviously makes things get hotter on a hot day. But a lens like this is not inexpensive. I think to buy a Canon 50 1.2, it's somewhere around $1,600 for a lens like this. It's got a huge big eye, as you can see. That's a lot bigger than what you see on the eye on my iPhone in comparison. So obviously more light is going to come in here, and that's one of the things that these prime, more expensive lenses do. They give you better light, especially when it's at night. They give you lower apertures, which means depth of field and a lot of things, not just how much focus plane there is. And we're not going to get too deep into aperture tonight, but also what it does to the background, where these lenses have different aperture adjustments as well. Like you can get an app like Filmic Pro, and you can adjust your aperture, so which will give you a different focus plane. So if you want to focus on my eyes and yet have my ears and everything behind me start to fall out of focus, that is not only the sensor in the camera, but it's also the lens, because the sensor size and the lens and how the distance from the from the sensor, from the glass, all makes a difference when you're talking about letting light through and what happens to light as it goes through all this glass. And then when you get into the zoom lenses, like this is a zoom right here, this is a 24 millimeter. So that means it goes super wide. So let's do it right now. I mean, it'll go this wide in my room, and then it will zoom into 105. So there I am, and it's totally now focusing on my mic, and now it's on me. Again, and that's ridiculous inside a studio, but when I take these lenses outside the studio, then that ability to reach out and get closer to something far away is important. So 50 millimeter is 50 all the time. The aperture is 1.2 all the time. And when you get to less expensive lenses, then the aperture will be variable. So you'll see lenses, right? Kit lenses and things like that come with like a Sony camera or a Canon camera or a Rebel. You'll see the kit lenses that have zoom ability, they'll have a variable aperture. So when you're zoomed way wide, it'll have one aperture, and then when you zoom in, it'll have another aperture, and then the aperture changes all the way in between as you're zooming in and zooming out. So when you buy a USB camera, if you're gonna zoom in and zoom out, it's probably being done 100% digitally. When you buy a prime lens and you have the capability somehow to crop in and out, 100% again digitally. So I could take a photograph, bring it into Photoshop, and crop it in. I can also shoot wide and use tools inside my Blackmagic Design software, and we'll look at some of those tools we talk about keying tonight, and I could actually change the crop in a live video shoot. So if my camera's not close enough and I don't like the framing, I could be in the back room at a live event. I could set up a crop. Obviously it is stretching the image, zooming into it digitally. So that 1080p is not truly going to be 1080p anymore. But if you don't do too much of that and you crop it in a live event, you're going to be surprised at the results that you get if you have great light and you have a great camera. So why would you spend money when you have a device like this, right? Or maybe a device like this, the Dji Mobile or the Dji Action? Why would you spend more money on cameras and lenses? Is it just because you're into gear? It's a great question. So, hi from Fort Worth. Hello from Maryland. Thanks, Kevin, for joining me. Craig, thanks for being here. Bill, again, Art. So, again, I asked tonight for you guys to communicate with me. Are you live streaming? And if you live stream, are you using what are you using? Are you using a USB camera? Are you using the camera inside your laptop? Are you using a DSLR? Are you using a Blackmagic Design camera? What kind of camera are you using? I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to find out where you're at. So when I got my lenses, it was all about photography and video. I had a Panasonic HMC 150, which was a 720p maximum camcorder by Panasonic. Very good camera, micro thirds processor inside of it. That's how cropped the sensor was. Had a built-in lens that would zoom. It had variable apertures. It had ND filters to help you cut down light when you're out in broad daylight. So if I was shooting an outdoor concert, having those built-in ND filters, and we will talk about ND filters on the channel, why you'd use them for video. Would you ever use an ND filter inside your studio when you can completely control the light? We'll talk about that in the future video. So again, cameras and lenses go together for the picture, and sometimes you buy something like this and the lens is included. You can buy adapters for your phone and cases so you can add a different lens on there. So you can actually change these lenses on the back by adding glass. And it's no different than taking the kind of glass that's in this Canon 50 mil 1.2 aperture lens, prime, right? It's what they call the L series, and that's what the red line is to let you know this is an L lens, and maybe someone will think you're cool when you're out there shooting with your camera. Look, Mom, he's shooting with an L lens. Probably not going to happen. But why would you spend all that money unless there was a real reason? And the reason is the bigger sensors, the newer sensors that are out there now, they have great ability to capture light. They have higher resolution, like up to 4K. Some of those cameras can do super slow-mo. So that's pretty important when you're trying to just slow down the action and let people really soak it in. Maybe relax the action. If you're shooting a video for some reason or showing a family in a video, a promo video or something like that, and they're on the swing sets with their hair in the background, you want to slow all that down. So you can capture those moments. There's lots of reasons. And the reason you would spend more money on lenses is to make sure that you're not putting a lens on a more higher quality sensor. And then what's happening is that you're not getting that information through the lens because it's going to come through the lens. So if you have a camera, you got to put a lens on it when they have detachable lenses, and it may come with a kit lens, or you may buy a, like a camera that has a built-in lens and you can't take it off. The light is still coming through the lens and it's going into a sensor. And if you're using a film camera, those of you that have shot with film before, you got to choose the sensitivity of the film. Are you going to shoot at night or are you going to shoot in broad daylight? You don't want to take 800 film out in a daytime shoot. You want to take out something that's low, like 100, because there's plenty of light out there and you do not want to have to limit your shutter speed and all the things that you can do with shutter speed when you're out shooting. Now, when you're shooting video, shutter speed is pretty static, right? And you can make some changes, especially when you're shooting slow-mo, you'll make changes to shutter speed, but it's very limited when you're shooting video, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk in a later video. But when you're doing photography, you can stop people jumping in the air by shooting at 200 frames per second and higher. They'll jump up and you snap that shot and they're frozen. Or you could shoot really, really, really slow if you could cut out the light, and you could make that water fill look like that silky smooth look that you see in those pictures that you love. I love it, right? There's just something about it. It's a waterfall to me is relaxing, and slowing that water down and let it just become like that milky smooth thing. And like an ocean, you shoot at 240 frames per second, you're going to freeze that wave and that sud and that splash. But if you could slow that shutter speed down far enough, it's just going to look like milky. Have you ever seen those morning shots of a dock and it's just milky? That is slowing down the shutter speed, and you can do that with photography. And then obviously the camera, the lens, and all that capture that. So that's a little bit about lenses. If you have a question tonight, please ask me. That was really where my passion started, was photography, videography B. Over the years, it's kind of moved to videography, and I do less photography. And if I was to tell you what my biggest passion is with photography, it would probably be landscapes. I love just capturing those vistas that just take your breath away, and being able to bring that thing I saw home, the sunsets home, what I felt on the beach, if I could capture that. And I've invested quite a bit of my discretionary money over the years because it's a passion of mine. So, we don't talk much about photography here on my channel, but I do like to touch on it every so often. But video, shooting a live stream, the camera, the sensor, the frame rate, all of that stuff is really important in getting a nice, crisp image. The last thing I want to say tonight about cameras is their ability to focus. Right? They have to be able to focus on you. And if you're moving around, having the ability for your camera to autofocus. So if you are going to invest in a camera, make sure that you make focus a very important priority, because there are some cameras that do really good quality video, but they don't have very good autofocus, and you want that. And the best camera I have in the studio by far is this one right here, and it's got eye detection right now, and it has the ability to track me, so I can move forward and I can move back, and this thing is detecting my eye and it's focusing me. And I can change the speed in which it focuses, and I can slow it down. I don't want it to be constantly breathing, and so I have slowed down how fast my cameras focus. And so they're designed to capture my eyes, and obviously they have a challenge because of my glasses. So cameras and lenses are important to what we do with live streaming, video production, YouTube channels, Twitch, gaming, right? There's gamers out there that listen to my channel occasionally as well, and they are wanting to have picture-in-picture. They want to understand keying and things like that, and cameras, and a lot of those people in that world use webcams, and a lot of those people in that world use lights like I have here on my desk, the Elgato key lights, because they are designed specifically for gamers and now streamers at your desk. And the life of Elgato, the manufacturer, and this is not a sponsored video, it's changing over time because more and more people are doing Zoom calls or other type online meetings, and even online concerts, online funerals, online weddings. So much is going online. In fact, businesses are springing up around the world to help people stream their event. And so people that do what we do, if you're a streamer or even a gamer streaming, the technology that you're learning is information that thousands of people are still trying to wrap their heads around. And that's why channels like this are attended by people that are trying to learn and try to grow in those areas. So let me look at the chat here. I'm trying out, this is Bill. Let's just start at the beginning here. I have a Canon 7D Mark II, great camera. A Canon R6, that's even a better camera. R6 is kind of the newer version after the EOS R by Canon, and the R5 is even more expensive. So also a Sony A7. Yeah, these are all great cameras. In fact, Josh, you have a great kit. So I have the Canon 5D Mark III, which was photography mainly and some video. The Canon 5D Mark IV, and then the EOS R. And I bought the EOS R right when the R5 and R6 were being announced. And I chose that camera because I was primarily using it in the studio. And I loved the turnaround screen. But I have confidence monitor in here, so I do most of my lives on my Canon 5D Mark IV. But those are great cameras. Don't see a question there. Live stream. Myself from Australia. Wow, thank you for coming from Australia. That's where Black Magic Design hails from, and great equipment coming out of Australia. So shout out to you. I'm sure it's late. Let me know what time it is in Australia. This is Bill. I'm trying out. Is this a HyperDeck 4K? Okay. Those cameras are controllable, right? I'm not very familiar with the cameras that are controllable, so I apologize, Bill. I think you've said this before. Streaming in 1080p, I can use 4K in real estate. So you're in real estate, so obviously video production in real estate is huge because people want to see the houses, and there's a big use for photography for years, and now video, even drone work in real estate is huge right now. A 25 mil G9 with f1.7, that's great. That's art. ATEM Mini Extreme Bill has, that's awesome. I rarely ISO record. I do when I'm shooting videos and I may want to cut back to another clip. I ISO recorded last week for my live stream and didn't even use the footage. So it's actually still on the SD card, but if I have a crisis in the middle of it, I can go back to it. Tonight, I'm not even recording, so it's YouTube only. I never pushed record tonight, so we're stuck with whatever goes up here on YouTube. And you can later on download your YouTube video, even at the highest resolution of 1080p. After it's rendered, it might take a day, and then you could actually edit that possibly and then post it back up. But live is live, so we might as well enjoy it while we can. Gosh, great feedback, guys. I absolutely love it. Bill says it's a webcam. Also outputs HDMI to my ATEM Mini Extreme. Wow, so I'll have to look at this camera Bill, I'd love to know more about it. Hadn't heard about it. I very much familiar with the Lumix and those cameras, the G9, even though I have not owned them. Obviously, I have Panasonic history. And another great manufacturer. Guys, I'm not specifically Canon. I just had my first camera of choice out of the influence of a young guy who was doing music videos, and I had a relationship with him because I was recording a rap artist and he was doing the video work, and then we worked together on a project, and it was quite fun for me. And he had a Canon 5D Mark II before the Mark III came out. And so that's kind of how I ended up going down that direction, because of seeing his camera and playing with his camera. And I had someone who could actually answer questions for me. So I also recommend the A6400 by Sony, by Sony, because it is such a good camera, even though it's a number of years old now. It just works really well for live streaming. So a lot of people I've worked with for live streaming setup, I've recommended that camera, and there's so many choices now. I kind of choose a camera that I feel confident, as well as I would know how to set up. So that's kind of why I recommend those cameras. And I explain that to my clients when I'm working with them, that this is where I'm comfortable working. So if you want to use a Blackmagic Design product, I'm very familiar with it. If you want to use something else, then I may not be the guy to come help set up your live venue. So, okay, we'll come back to these questions. Thank you so much for all this great feedback. Thank you for joining me on here, Josh. And it's 9:40 Wednesday. That's crazy. 9:40 in the morning. Well, okay, we're Australia. Cool. I can hit Australia. That's incredible. And I have two Elgato key lights. Again, this one fell down. So my hair light wasn't as good as it is now. It's also a key light when I switch cameras. So I can use it as a key light. So I have it up and to the left. And when I turn around this way, it becomes a hair light. And actually, when I turn around this way, it becomes a hair light, and this becomes my key light. And when I turn around this way, it's just reverse. So again, I don't have much fill, but I get bounce off this wall right here from this light, and that helps fill in my shot. So I don't want the time to get too far away from us tonight. So let me minimize this window right here. I'm gonna get out of OBS altogether. I wanna say this though, shout out to Aaron Parecki. His channel is awesome, John Barker. But the reason I wanna shout out to Aaron Parecki is he recently did a explanation of how to use a tool that he created that you can bring comments on the screen. I played with it this week. I had way too much going on in tonight's live stream to try to add that to my plate, but I've actually been able to bring in the chat into OBS. I've been able to key it, and we're going to talk about keys right now. And I was able to go in to this show tonight and take my first comment and bring it up on the screen and have it below here. And I'm gonna try to have that working by next Tuesday night, so join me. And so you can go to his channel, watch that video. So you can just type in on Aaron Parecki's YouTube channel. I think I searched for the chat in YouTube, or a chat in OBS, or just go to Aaron Parecki's channel, and I'll put a link here in the description tonight. But I thought that was really cool that I was able to do all that on Aaron's, because of Aaron Parecki's help, and it was all free. You just have to know how to use OBS, which is a free download. Again, that's going to be a great tool for me. I can pop up your chat, then I can read it up here instead of looking down at my iPad, which is plugged in. Let me unplug it. And it was charging, and I'm watching the chat right here on an iPad. I can also switch over to MixFX. And again, I'm not using MixFX tonight. I'm using macros, and I could power those through my Stream Deck and Companion, but I'm just continuing to live as much as I possibly can inside the Blackmagic Design control software, and then occasionally using MixFX for Super Source to really animate things. So let's talk about keying tonight, right? So what is a key? Do you know? I mean, if you're using a ATEM, right, a Mini Pro ISO, they have an upstream key 1, and they have a downstream key 2. But what is a key? And then when you talk about the keys, if you look at your upstream key inside your control software, when you're using your upstream key, right, you can actually go to Luma, Chroma. You can actually do more inside there. You can open up a DVE, and I already showed you tonight. Using that brings me up on the screen. That's one of my keys set to DVE. But what is a key, and why are there so many choices in a upstream key and then not so many choices in a downstream key? So not only in an upstream key can you do Luma, and it's the perfect name for it because it's working with light. You can change a graphic on the screen and key a graphic on there so I can be seen, and the graphic can also be seen. And I've turned off my lower thirds right now for this part because I really want to talk us through this. So the key gives you the ability to do that. And when you only have one key, right, you're going to have to choose how you're going to use that key in your software for your live stream. And so most people, unlike me, will use lower thirds and those type things. They will typically use a downstream key, and we'll look at why here in a minute. But the upstream keys can be brought into the software in transition. So let's see if this macro works here right now. And I'll hit run it. Don't want this on. I know it looks like a disaster because this needs to go right here. Sorry. And let's just go back to this camera view. Don't have a clue what just happened here. Turn all these keys off and switch back to camera 2. So let's just turn on, I apologize. Sometimes these macros, if I start in the wrong location or the wrong camera, they just go crazy. But what I want to do is I want to talk about the Extreme and the Extreme ISO. They have more than just one upstream key and one downstream key. And let's talk about upstream keys first. Again, Luma keys out the light. Chroma with a key can key out the color of the background. So if I put a green screen behind me right now and I switch over to Chroma Key, and so we'll bring up my control software here real quick so you guys can see it. So let's cut to 4, and then I'll put myself down here. And so again, you have your keys up here, and you can see I have this key on, so I'll turn it on and off. And I have this set key number 3, because here's key 1, here's key 2, here's key 3, and I can turn them on and off. There's my lower thirds. That's the background in that image, and it's behind the image in front of it. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. And that's because of the order that I have these keys set up. So, and then what happens if I turn on key number 4, then I popped up another DVE. So key number 4 is set to DVE, and we're going to look at that here in a second. Key number 3 is also set to DVE, and when you have 2 DVEs on at the same time, you don't have to use Super Source. Super Source can put 1 window up or 2 windows up, 3 windows up, 4 windows up, and I could still bring in these DVEs. So if you have an ATEM Mini with 1 upstream key and 1 DVE, you could bring up a picture-in-picture. So you can literally do this right here as well. So if you have an ATEM Mini or an ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Mini Pro ISO, you can do this. You can have a picture-in-picture, and you can make it whatever size you want. You can put the border around it. I have yellow around this. I also have a shadow. I wanted you to see all the effects the DVE will do. And you can also do this. So let's turn that one off. And let's turn the lower thirds on. You could also, if you wanted a lower thirds, you could choose lower thirds, or you would have to go up, and I'm going to turn this back on. You would have to go up into these settings right here. So this is key 1 on my Extreme, and if you had an ATEM Mini, ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, you would only have one of these. I have to sort through 4 different Upstream keys. These are able to go with the transitions. So I can actually turn this off, turn this one off, and then I can turn this button on right here in my first key. And now when I change from desktop back to this camera, this key is going to turn on and follow the transition. And that, my friends, is one of the biggest things that that's different between a upstream key and a downstream key, right? I can do this exact same thing with a downstream key, but I can't see a preview of it. It happens after the transitions are done. So I can have a lower thirds in my key number 1, and I can have it a lower thirds just for this view. And let's say I had someone else that I was going to bring in through Zoom, right? And I wanted a lower thirds with their name on it. I can do that now inside my ATEM Mini Extreme ISO because I have 4 keys. So I can have one of my media players, and I'll show you my media player here right now. Switch to camera 4, and I'll put myself back in here. So if I go into my media pool, I have 2 media players. If you have an ATEM Mini or ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, you're only going to have 1 media player. That means all of these graphics above me, they're ready to be played if I get them into a media player, and I have 2 of those. So what if I have 4 keys and I want to have more than just 2 graphics all at the same time? Well, that's not going to happen through the media player. I'm going to have to find another way to bring in a graphics source into my key number. If I have my media player 1 assigned to key 1, and we'll look at that here in a second, and my media player 2 assigned to key number 2, then I need to have another source to bring in a lower thirds to key number 3 and key number 4 if I just want lower thirds. And that's the beauty of having more keys. And I can have those go on and off as those cameras come on and off. And then things get a little bit more complicated when you use Super Source, which is only available in the most expensive consoles. And now in the ATEM Mini Extreme and ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, you have Super Source as well. And you can do things with Super Source that kind of supersedes the keys, even though it's kind of like a key and a DVE all combined because of what you can do with Super Source. So I have my DVE number, or my key number 3 set to DVE, and let's look at that right now. So if I go up to this particular key, so we'll close key 1, close key 2, and now we're going to open up key 3. So there it is. And I have Luma. That looks horrible. And I have DVE all in the end. And my Luma key is actually assigned right now with my HyperDeck. And that's why every time I turn that Luma key on, it is actually firing up the auto roll on my HyperDeck. So we won't do that again, but there you go. My source is this camera right now. And if I wanted it to be the other camera, I can change the source right now. So there I am. Now you can see the side of me. And I only have these 2 cameras live as of right now. But if I fire up my 5D Mark III, which like I said, times out, and now it's live, then I can go to it. So this DVE could be any input. I can make it my desktop, so I can show you what you're already seeing. I can show you my multi-view, which is right now in this channel right here. So back to my main camera. So that DVE, if you have one in your ATEM Mini or your other your rack mounted switchers by Blackmagic Design, or even another brand switcher, right? Even the YOLO box has the ability to put graphics on the screen, and it's the same concept. It's a little different. Some of the apps on your iPhone are a little different. All you have to do is create a graphic and then tap on it. It automatically comes in, and you can move it around the screen. And I can move this DVE around the screen as well. So watch right here. This is going to go wherever I want it to go now because I'm moving the location. I can make it bigger or smaller, up and down. And so if it's in my way and I'm live, I can move this out of my way. And the way you do that is you hover over the edges of these quadrants. I don't have to type in these numbers. I can literally change these on the fly because there they are. So here's the shadow setting for this key. And I'm using the DVE, and I'm just basically keying out the background. The DVE does that, so the background is behind this. So what would happen if this was, if I was using the DVE and then I turned on one of my downstream keys? Downstream keys, they have less, they're less intuitive in that they have less options because they're not designed to be in kind of this part of my ATEM control software. They happen over there, right over here on the other side of the bar. So as I move this bar up and down, it affects the inputs, it affects the different, the keys I have on. And if I move this window down just a touch so you can see this, actually, let's move it down, touch. That's up and down, sorry. Let's move it down out of the way. Then you can see that this key number 1 is set to key, which means it's gonna follow the next transition. And so the next transition, if I turn this off for a second, you can see it's going back to camera 2 from input 4. And so if I switch right now and move the bar, this logo, lower thirds, right here below me comes on because it's assigned to come on. So if I switch right now quickly over to 4, actually 4, then you can see it's still on because I didn't do the transition. If I had gone from camera 2 and did a transition, watch, it will actually follow and go away because I have it set to follow that particular input. So keys will follow the input. They're layered on top of each other. So 1 would be the first layer, 2 is the second layer. So key number 2 in an extreme or extreme ISO or some of the other ones. And if you only have one upstream key and one downstream key, they will lay on top of each other. The downstream keys are gonna come on last. So let's just turn all of these crazy things on and let's see what happens. So you can see 2 of them because this right here graphic is over. So let's turn these 2 off. And so there's my lower thirds, but this is covering it. So this lower thirds that's behind me right now is layer 1. If I turn on key number 2 and watch it right up here, it's layer 2. So if I move me out of the way, right, it's gone because it's being covered up by layer 2. But if I pull layer 2 off, which is key number 2, I now can see the key. And this is important to know because this Luma key that's the lower thirds is in my key number 1, and I'm playing that from my media player. And so you guys can see that again. There that graphic is right up here in my media player. And the other graphic, the background, is set up in my other media player too. So I can bring both of these up, believe it or not, at the exact same time. So I can have that one on and this one on. But what if I didn't want it that direction? What if I wanted to go into key number 2, right? And I want key number 2. So let me show you this right now. So let's turn this off and me on, and I'll move myself over. Got to go to key number 3 here. Let me move myself out of the way here. So now let's go to key number 1 and let's change it to media player 2 here for its source. That's key number 1. And now let's go to key number 2 and let's change it to media player 1. And I could have just pulled these graphics to the other place. Now let's move me back over in key number 3. And now watch what happens when I turn on key number 1. It's the background. So that's layer 1 now. Key number 2 is in the foreground. And because I have it set up right now, this is what a Luma key does, right? I have to go to key number 2 or key number 1, and I need to adjust these settings to get the right look. because it is actually not a pre-multiplied key, so it's affecting the background. And so we'll just turn those two off. And so that's how you use your keys. They are layered on top of each other. So we bring key number 4 on. There you have it. Key number 4 is right over top of me. I'm going to change this back so I can move me out of the way. So let's move me over where I was, and we'll move me a little bit bigger. And so I can move these different keys around the screen live. You would probably have macros set to turn these on and off. You probably wouldn't do all this crazy stuff unless you were talking about how to use keys. So now I'm going to go back into key 1. So let's turn off key 4. And let me go back into key 1. I'm going to change it back to media player 1. And then let's go to key 2. And we're going to change it back to media player 2. Oh, there was my mistake. I did not have these two settings, my fill source and my key source, right when I switched those up. And that's why you had that weird look. You need to have these set to media player 2 and media player 2 key when you do that. So it's very important. And if you're going to do a pre-multiplied key, which means it's already cut out the background, then you turn pre-multiplied on, but you don't turn that on if your graphic doesn't have a pre-multiplied key. So that's the keys. They layer on each other. Let's turn them all on again. It's on right now. I can turn this on, but as soon as I take layer 2 and turn it on, my lower thirds is going to disappear. So let's leave these on now, right? And let's then bring in my, let's turn this off. Let's make these a little smaller. So I'm going to go, not to super source, I'm going to go to key number 3, and I'm going to make myself just a little smaller. And I'm going to bring myself down so you can see where these keys lie. So this key 3 is over top of key number 1. And then if I go to key 4, and I'll bring it down in size just a little bit, and I'm going to switch discs here in my HyperDeck. And then what I want to do is I want to bring it over or down just a little bit. And now what I want to do is I want to bring in these keys. So I'll show you this real quick. Turn this on. Right here is my downstream keys, and they're after this bar. Now I can tie those to a transition or like to an input, but it's not the same as an upstream key. Just because it doesn't do the same things, doesn't have the same options, and it happens after the fact, and you can't see it in the preview window. So if I bring up my preview window, I'll show you when you turn a key on and off, you can see it in the preview window when it's an upstream key, but when you turn on and off a downstream key, you don't get any preview of that because it happens after the transition. So that's why this console is divided in 2 sides, where the downstream keys are up there and the upstream keys are up there. I mean, right over there on my top of me on the right. So let's just do this now. Let's bring in on the air key 1, and it's my lower thirds graphic. So I turn it off. The graphic's behind me because that's in this key right here. So let's turn that key 1 off. If I want that to be over top of this box, then I can do it by using my downstream key because it's the last layer. But wait, I have 2 downstream keys. So what happens if I turn on one more downstream key? What's going to happen here? Now I have this set to play my HyperDeck logo, and I'm going to loop this. And so this is my subscribe button. So I hope you will subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and ring the bell and like this video if it's helping you learn more about upstream keys, downstream keys, and cameras and lenses. So now we have both keys on. And if I take this, go back to my palettes, and I go down to my downstream keys, which are right down here, and they're in the same box. Now let me go to this subscribe button right here, and here is the ability to pre-multiply. I can mask it, and it's going to fall where it's designed to fall. And that's where I designed it. I designed it as a lower thirds to animate right there, and I cannot move it around the screen. That's the other thing about downstream keys, is that they don't have a DVE. I can't move them around the screen. So if I'm going to bring that lower thirds, which is playing from my HyperDeck, remember, I only have 2 media pools, and here they are. One of them has my lower thirds, and the other one has the background. Right? So if I want to bring in another lower thirds, I can do it static right there through my HyperDeck, or I can do it animated. So I can do that with my downstream key. And most people use their downstream key for graphics like I have right here. That's downstream key 1. And over there is downstream key 2. So I could have all of these on, as crazy as that sounds, all on at the same time. And this is what you get. And it depends on their layer. If I turn that background that's not transparent off, then you can count the layers. You can see my input right here, right? That's my main input. I can change that to camera 2 input. I can change it to camera 1 input, and I can go right back to that camera 4, input number 4, which is my desktop. And I have my subscribe playing. I have 2 DVEs playing, and I have this lower thirds. And the reason you can't see my other lower thirds is it's right behind it. So let's turn off this downstream key right here. And there it is, right behind me. But I can't bring it on top of everything else because they are layered. So here we go. We're going to turn off layer 1. There goes my subscribe. Layer 2, there goes the logo in front of me. Let's turn off layer 3, there goes that DVE over there. Let's turn off layer 3. There goes that DVE. We already turned off key number 2. Turn it back on and you can see just that layer and nothing in front of it. And you can see how these come on one at a time. So here's key 1. It's covered by key 2. And I did this so you could see this. There's my picture-in-picture with camera number 2 in my studio. And here is key number 4. So 4 keys. Then I can bring on DVE 1 or downstream key 1, and I can bring in downstream key 2. Okay, let's turn all these off and talk about one more thing. So here I have the lower thirds graphic. We'll change back to my camera, and this is my main camera and my main look on my live streams. But what are these other things? Chroma Key, I don't have a green screen behind me. If I switched over to Chroma Key right now, in my palettes, go to key number 1, go to Chroma Key, you're gonna see crazy stuff because I'm not doing any kind of Chroma Key. It's set for green, and so it's not designed to take this background out behind me. But I could sample the background behind me, and in a later video, we'll play around with a real green screen behind me, but that's what a Chroma Key does. It lets you remove a color, so just I stay inside the picture. So if everything behind me is green and I don't have any green on my shirt, I can key out the background using a Chroma Key. I also can use what they call a pattern. So now my logo went away. So let's not go pattern in this one. Let me go back to key number 3, which is me. And now let me go to pattern. And so now key number 3, sorry, we want key number, is this key number 3, 4, Chroma Key, Luma Key. Oh, I don't have it on, sorry. So there you go. Now I'm inside a box. I'm inside a circle. Here's another box. I can transition between these by moving the bar. So I'll move the fader bar. Let me go between 2 different camera views. And so I can actually use these. I can make the edges bigger or smaller, these edges. I can also mask them. And I can actually create a pattern, I can mask them, and I can also make them fly. So let's go back to DVE for this, and then I'm back, and let's go back to my desktop. So this just makes more sense having this lower third. So I don't really need my logo like that. If I was gonna use this setup, I would have my logo right here using my downstream key 1. So that's a little look at upstream keys and downstream keys. If I wanted to just bring in my overhead camera, I could bring in this and go to key number 4, and then just simply bring in my Canon 5D Mark III, and now you have the overhead look in my studio. And if I had another camera coming in, like I do, I could switch to my EOS R, and now you have this look. And so I could just use my DVEs to bring in different pictures and different things on the screen. And I can also use what we call super source, and we will look at that in a different video. So again, my upstream key lets me do picture in picture. I can turn the border off and on right here. And I'm right over here on the right-hand side. I can turn the shadow on and off. And I've already showed you guys that I can actually crop it. But what if I want it to fly around the screen? So what happens if I go down here let's turn this off, the border off. Well, let's leave the border on. So what if I go down here to this section right here? Actually, let's go like this. Let's go to pattern. And I have a border. And what if I want to move this around the screen? I can set these quadrants. So let's change this input up here to my camera 4. So you guys see me. Sorry, upstream key 3, getting confused here. Go to my Canon 5D Mark III. And so down here under flying key, I can move these things around the screen like this, and I can set that as A. I can make it move over to the right, top quadrant, maybe down just a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. Set that as quadrant B, and then I can go to these different quadrants by hitting these buttons down here, or I can go to full view, which is where we started. Now, this is not the best situation, but I'm just showing you that with your upstream keys, you can actually do this flying effect as well. And if you've been around any live streams, you can see, especially when you see news events and things like that, you can see these things fly around the screen just like you saw. So DVEs let you do some crazy things, as well as downstream keys and upstream keys let you add different graphics to your screen. And then if you add a HyperDeck or even other devices so that you can come in from your laptop, and Blackmagic Design has devices that will let you do a key and a fill from your laptop. You can buy a card for your Mac or your PC, a DeckLink card. You can buy the little HD converter that has, it looks like a little HyperDeck. I forget the name of it right now, but I'll put a link in the screen. And it has Thunderbolt. So if you have a Thunderbolt output, you can come out of it into that device. And then you can come out of software from your computer. So you could come out of OBS with a keyed out graphic, pre-multiplied keyed graphic. You could come out with flying graphics out of software. You can use stuff that lots of churches do and let venues do to do all their fonts and all their graphics. And they bring those right out of their PC into their ATEM control surfaces, whatever it is, an ATEM Mini, all the way up to the big consoles. They use that type device as well. So guys, I hope that this conversation about upstream keys and downstream keys help you know a little bit more about them. I want to take some questions right now. So I see Craig said you're using this camera for Zoom meetings and a 12 megapixel HDMI camera. That's awesome. I see a Canon 90D and a Canon 80D, a ZV-E10 from Sony. Great camera. Hi, Stop and Think for joining us. Thank you so much. PlayStation for streaming. That's great. Xbox, you can stream right from them. That's cool. So you can stream your games, but you'll need to have a way to bring in your video camera. And I don't use Xbox or PlayStation. My son streams from a PC. So he does that. I've used OBS before, used my phone, but again, there's lots of ways with a web camera or even a laptop camera to stream right directly from a PC or a USB device like a Logitech C920, which I have here in the studio. So any questions tonight? Hey, Doug, Forced Online, thank you for joining me. Always late, that's fine. Better late than never. You can watch the stream back. We talked about cameras, lenses, and we're finishing up talking about upstream keys and downstream keys. And as always, the time gets away from us. It's 5:17. I want to take a few minutes for questions. If you need to go, I understand. Thank you so much for joining me on the live stream tonight. But I want to address some questions. So if you have any questions about upstream keys or downstream keys or lenses or my studio, let's do that now. So you can put those questions in the chat. I'm just going back here to make sure I haven't missed any questions. Cool. So there's cameras that are controllable, but they also have an HDMI out. The cool thing about the new HyperDeck Studio HD Plus, right, is it has has a USB-C out that becomes a web camera. So I could actually now bring video or lower third graphics into OBS from my HyperDeck. And so that's going to be interesting, kind of mind-boggling. They have an HDMI out in the new device, an HDMI in. And if you haven't seen that device, let me find my macros right here. It's this. That's the device I have coming, and you can see that there's lots of new features, better button layout, a dark mode for the screen, and even right here next to my hand, you have a monitor built in, a headphone out, and that's amazing. And that's a macro that's designed to time out after so many frames, so I can kick it on again, but I set it to come on and then go off again. And that's exactly where I had that graphic last week in my live stream when I was talking about this. So that device can be brought in to use one of your keys. And again, you've got to get it from the device into your ATEM Mini Extreme or Extreme ISO or the other bigger consoles. You can bring a HyperDeck into an ATEM Mini, a Mini Pro ISO. It takes up at least one HDMI port. And if you want to key out the background, you're going to need to be able to have two come in for a pre-multiplied graphic. And I have information on what those are, a number of videos here on the channel, so check that out. And I did a whole series on the HyperDeck Mini, late to the party, and now the new Studio HD Plus is out, and I'm going to do a series on that device as well as soon as it arrives. And I'm number 6, whatever that means, at the dev store here in Washington, and hopefully they're going to get a shipment here in the United States from our friends in Australia very, very, very soon, or hopefully maybe they're already in the United States waiting to be distributed from a warehouse. I don't know, but I can't wait to get that here. So any questions? Let's take a few minutes. Let me catch my coffee break. I want to say I'm honored that you're on with me. It's amazing. I dedicated Tuesdays. I spend lots of time contemplating what would be good. The whole goal always is educating, sharing a wealth of information, gathering information, and my relationships with some of the people that are on my channel or subscribe to my channel don't necessarily end with you just listening to me. I love the comments. I've actually reached out to some of the guests on my channel. We've had Zoom conversations, I'm a consultant, but I will do an hour consulting Q&A with anybody through Zoom that requests it. Just go to my website, lifejourneyproductions.com, and fill out the little contact form and let me know that where you saw me on the channel, and I'll reach out to you via email. That way I'm not putting my email all over YouTube, but you can find it right there by going to my website. And so any questions here? Let's look. Lots of chat tonight. Let me come back up here. hot Southern California. That's cool. Hi back from cooled off Tri-Cities, Washington. That's Richland, Kennewick, Pasco. That's why we call it Tri-Cities. They're all right between the Columbia River is right between all three of them. Then there's actually a West Richland, a Burbank, a Findlay, and other cities, 7 cities right here, all kind of in one area, but it's not one big city like Seattle. They are all individual cities with their own mayors and their own rules, and it's fun sometimes. So hi to you. Cool. Using an Amaron 100X lights to keep the budget down. Yeah, lights are great. I'll talk about lights again on my channel. But I talked about lights last week and I showed off a lot of my lights. You can see my Aperture MCs behind me. And if I go to this view, almost cut on my Pro. If I go to this view and turn around, you can see right over my shoulder behind that ship is my new Aperture bulb light, which I did a video here on my channel. Not a lot of people have watched that, but that's a really cool light. Check that out. I mean, if you ever need to change a bulb in your room and you want complete control over it, I have complete control, amazing app. I can even pick colors. It's the Sidus Link app, and I absolutely love that. Again, it's not sponsored by Aperture. Those are the only Aperture lights I have. I have 5 now. I have 4 MC lights, which are the little mini lights that actually have magnets on the back. They also are bicolor as well as RGB, and so is that light bulb. The little MCs charge wirelessly, just like your phone will charge on a wireless charger. I did a DIY build-it-yourself case, so I can put up to 8 of those MC lights in it. Even though Aperture sells a case, they don't give you softboxes for all the lights that come in their kit of 4 and come in their kit of 12. It's ridiculous in my opinion. I love the lights. I absolutely think Aperture's products are amazing. I look forward to doing reviews and unboxings of other Aperture products, but I want softboxes for every single one of my little MC lights. And so that's why I ordered them individually. I'm going to order 4 more as soon as I can make the budget for that. And the excitement is I'm going to have 8 of those lights, and they will be all around this studio creating light. And I don't have an extra one even to do Batman and Robin, which you know, part of my childhood, I got Batman and Robin up here. I love the superheroes. I love the idea and the concept of the whole concept of a hero, and the fact that the Cape Crusaders are on my shelf watching over my live streams, I always think is amazing. But I can't wait to add more lights up there to just make them look more lit, right? Because we are shooting video and we're shooting light. So any other questions here? So I talked about the PlayStation. Would an ATEM Mini work with streaming a gaming source? Yeah, you can come out of your Xbox or your PlayStation, your Xbox One, the new Xbox, the new PlayStation, the older ones. The HDMI out would come out and you would split it. One would go into your ATEM. The other one would go to a monitor if you had an extra monitor display, and then you can use that as an input. So basically, let's say that camera 1 was what I was showing everybody. So let me cut to camera 1. And then, so I'll turn around here. I need a mouse, and then I'm going to go into my software. I'm going backwards here. Oh, sorry, I messed up the picture-in-picture. I apologize. So what I would do is I would bring in one of my pictures-in-pictures. Let's see if I can fix this. Let's go to DVE. This needs to be camera 4, and turn it on, turn that off, and size it back down where it's supposed to be. So you saw when I went to full, when I was doing the flying key, it literally made that DVE full screen. And you may have thought I was just in that channel, but in reality, that was still my DVE playing. So then this would be your Xbox in the background, right? And better yet, let's make it my desktop. So this would be whatever your game you're playing, and then you would have this on in the ATEM Mini. You'd have the DVE 1 on. You would choose this input, right? This camera. And now this would be where I'd be gaming. I'd be gaming away, talking to everybody. You could put a green screen behind you and click on Chroma Key and Chroma Key out the background. And there's just lots of things that you could do then with an ATEM Mini or ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Mini Pro ISO. Now the ATEM Mini will stream through your laptop or through your Macintosh, but it won't render, do the codec inside the unit. You have to get the Pro or the ISO. And the Pro will not only stream directly from it, it'll also do the encoding. It also can then record to an SSD. So if you're gonna go directly from the ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Mini Pro ISO, then you can hook up an SSD. It looks like this, the ones I use. You can hook up this to your Pro. I use one of these in my Extreme, and I can record tonight's show to it. You would be able to record that stream as well, edit it, and then play it back later. The ISOs let you record every channel, so you'd have a clean video recording of this view, right? And then you'd also have one of the desktop, which would be your Xbox, whatever you were showing from your Xbox or your PlayStation. So hope that answers your question. Let's look here and see if there's any more. Yeah, so let me know, Josh, if you have any more questions about the ATEM. So the question is, Josh, do you think that 4K live streaming with an ATEM Mini or an Extreme is a software-based enhancement or a mechanical enhancement? Here's the deal. The ATEM Mini all the way up to the Extreme ISO, they only go up to 1080p, 60 frames per second. So that means if I brought in a 4K camera, it's only going to stream at 1080p. You could buy a cam link or a different mixer. And the cam link that I have right here, let's change cameras. Let's go to camera 2, full screen here. You could do this and turn that off, turn this on. So this is a cam link, and this will go up to 4K, and then I could stream from OBS. So if you want to stream 4K, you may want to look at some other streaming card from Elgato and use one camera. If you want more than one camera, then 1080p max, and you could ISO record. So you could come out of the camera into the new HyperDeck or the old HyperDeck, because my HyperDeck Mini will record up to 4K 30 frames per second. But then I need to come out of the HyperDeck again into my ATEM and then stream the event at 1080p and then maybe post it later at 4K. If you just want to stream 4K, you're going to come up with a different solution. You're not going to use an ATEM Mini, Mini Pro ISO, Mini Extreme ISO, because they will only go up to 1080p. Now, the new Web Presenter 4K that was announced 2 Thursdays ago. So this Thursday will be 2 weeks since Blackmagic announced 4 new HyperDecks, 2 new cameras, as well as the new Web Presenter 4K. That will stream 4K again. And so you would still have to feed it 4K. And if you're going to try to get more than one camera in that Web Presenter 4K, you're going to have to then have some way to switch between cameras. So I hope that answers your question. But 1080p, 60 frames per second is the max. That's all I could do tonight from my ATEM Mini, because I'm Extreme ISO, because I'm actually streaming from it. So let me see, any other more questions? Picture-in-picture and any ATEM, yes. Again, it's the Upstream Key DVE that will do that picture-in-picture, and obviously that's what's activated when you push the picture-in-picture button on the front of your ATEM Mini, ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO. I just use the control software, but I have buttons on front of my ATEM. If I was doing a live event, I practice, I could use those buttons as well, but I probably almost always will be operating the ATEM from software or a macro or from something that will automatically do a number of things. So yes, picture-in-picture, any ATEM, okay? As far as the Mini line, when you get to the other ones, most of all of those, I think, have picture-in-picture. When you get to the Web Presenters, I don't think the Web Presenter has picture-in-picture, but again, that's not my cup of tea. I apologize if that's totally wrong. if I was purchasing an ATEM right now and I was on a tight budget, I would probably, and I didn't really need to do a bunch of video in my live streams. I'm just starting to stream. I would probably get a ATEM Mini Pro because it does have the ability to stream directly from it. But if you could afford to get an Extreme, then you get so much. There's so much there. Like, for instance, right now I'm looking at my confidence monitor, and that is out of the HDMI 2 output. The ATEM Mini, the ATEM Mini Pro, and ATEM Mini Pro ISO only have one HDMI output, and that's primarily used so that you can see the multi-view. And the ATEM Mini doesn't even have multi-view. You can only see the program view, which is what you're seeing right now. This is the program view. But I could also show you guys my multi-view because it was up. I don't know what happened. Oh, there it is. So I could show you guys my multi-view. I think this is 6 is my multi-view. I apologize if this is not it. Yeah, so there's my multi-view. So that's what I'm looking at normally in my studio. And obviously what you can do with your multi-view in an Extreme and Extreme ISO is different than what you can do with your multi-view in an ATEM Mini Pro and ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So again, a Pro minimum. And I think the prices are going to be coming down even more. They dropped $100 when they came out with the Extreme and Extreme ISO. So that's what I'd recommend you get. It has 4 inputs, an HDMI out. You have the ability to stream from it through the Ethernet port. You'll take up 2 inputs if you're going to bring in a HyperDeck, if you want to actually do motion graphics. So you're only going to have 2 inputs left. And you can actually come out of the HyperDeck using HDMI out. Again, it's not keyed, but if you just want to play a video in your live stream, you have one HDMI out coming out of the old HyperDeck Mini or the HD HyperDeck Mini. So you can buy one of those. They're going to drop, I think, in price. They were $699. I think you're going to see the old HyperDecks drop. They've been around for approximately 10 years, and they're just now updating those decks. So again, you know, do research before you pull the trigger, but I think a Pro would be a good investment if you can't afford an ATEM Mini Extreme because it has lots and lots of features as well as 8 inputs. So one of these days, I'll just do a whole video on the HyperDeck, not the HyperDeck, but the ATEM Mini Pro line, the smaller line, to the Extreme and Extreme ISO line, because I have not done a dedicated Tuesday video to that. So if you have any more questions, if I missed a question, what mic arm are you using? I saw that now, Kevin. This is the PSA 1 by Shure. Lots of people are using it. It has a through the desk mount, comes with it. So you drill through your desk, and it has a clamp. And I like it. It gets squeaky over time. Mine's pretty squeaky, so you just have to WD-40 it or better oil than that. But I love it. It can handle pretty much any mic I put on it. And this is an extension that I have right here to get my mic further away. And you can order these. I think they're like $6. Just type in the Shure PSA 1 extension arm, and you can order that from Amazon. So, and I'll put a link to this arm in the notes after the stream gets uploaded. So, or actually after it goes off live. So, man, guys, that's a lot. I hope I hit all your questions. Great questions tonight. In the future, with this many people live, if you put question before your question, that would help me, or a cue just to let me know there's a question in it. I love the chat going on tonight. I love the information on what you guys are using. That's so cool. I feel more connected now. All those devices out there, there's thousands of ways for you to do streaming, but we can still grow and learn together on these channels. And that is my goal, to help you grow and learn and become just more relaxed at what you're doing, because practice makes perfect, and having the right equipment helps things look better. And that's really what we were talking about tonight. The keys just help me put things on the screen, to show you things, to share my screen, to be on the screen while I'm sharing the screen. And if you go back and look at some of my other videos, I do lots with SuperSource as well. But I wanted to stay away from SuperSource tonight because I wanted to demo how much you can do with your upstream keys and your downstream keys, especially when you get up to the extremes. And again, the ATEM Mini, the ATEM Mini Pro, the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, they have one upstream key and 1 downstream key. When you get to the extremes, both of them, extreme ISO, you get 4 upstream keys, 2 media players, and you only have 1 of those in the lower lines. And then you have 2 downstream keys. It's almost more than you have ability to bring in things. But if you use them specifically for all the different things they do, then yeah, you could actually find a use for all 6 of those keys in a live stream, especially if you're having guests on and you need more than one person's name below you or below them when they're on live. And so, great. Thank you so much. I have a macro tonight. I'm not using my Stream Deck. I'm not using Companion. I'm literally using my mouse on macros. And I need to just remind you guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. There's my little subscribe button right there, and hit the like button. Give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. And we'll turn that downstream key off. And I'm using my HyperDeck, so I got to change discs to get you to my outro video. And that's it for me tonight. Thank you for being here. I'll be back again next Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I've got another great topic. And as soon as my Blackmagic Design HyperDeck Studio HD Plus, and if that isn't a mouthful, gets here, I don't know what is. I will be doing a number of videos on that to show you the benefits and compare it to my HyperDeck Mini that I've had in the studio now for over a year. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Keith. This is Life Journey Production Studios, and I will see hopefully every single one of you in a soon coming video. And if you're watching recorded, thank you so much. Let your questions and your comments and what you're using be in the notes as well as you view this video. Thanks. I'll see you guys next week. Outro. Play.